I want to begin by telling you a story I heard, not just a story, a scientific fact that was articulated when I heard it by a neuroscientist at Stanford named Dr. James Doty. He wrote two wonderful books. One of my favorites, it's called Into the Magic Shop, another one called Mind Magic. And he was talking about the fact that previously it was believed that the brain was the main intelligence center of the body. But now they have discovered that there is a highway of sorts, a connecting link between the brain and the heart, and that the partnership between the brain and the heart, the interaction between the brain and the heart, forms the real intelligence center of the body. I thought that was fantastic because it seems to me that the connection between the brain and the heart clearly forms the intelligence center of everything in our lives, and it also forms the intelligence center of human civilization. Mahatma Gandhi once said that the real problem with the world is that humanity is not in its right mind. So I want you to hold those two issues in your mind. Number one, that there is a connecting link between the brain and the heart, and that Gandhi said the problem with the world is that we're not in our right mind. To say we're not in our right mind means that we have lost the connectivity that is the natural way of being between brain and heart. Now, I'm a student of A Course in Miracles. Many of you listening probably are as well. A Course in Miracles is not a religion. There's no doctrine. There's no dogma. It refers to itself as a psychological mind training. Basically, it's a training in forgiveness. It's a training in how to use the mind differently, with the supposition that the way we are trained by the thinking of the world to use the mind is so disconnected from the heart that we're not in our right minds. Now, how do we get back to our right mind? Well, you might be approaching all of this through the filter of religion. You might be approaching it through the filter of what is often called spiritual but not religious. Or you might be approaching this through psychotherapy, psychotherapeutic analysis, just understanding the way the mind works, consciousness. That's such a it's such a pioneering field today. What's happening in the brain, what's happening in consciousness. So what I submit to you, there's a line in the Course in Miracles where it says, at their peak, religion and psychotherapy are the same thing. And the reason it says that is because the goal of religion, religio, the Latin root to bind back, means to bind back to the heart, and psychotherapy are the same thing, the healing of the mind. The Course in Miracles says you think you have many different problems, but you really only have one. And that one problem is our disconnectedness from the truth of who we are. Now, the Course in Miracles uses traditional Christian terms, but it uses them in decidedly non-traditional, psychotherapeutically oriented ways. So when I'm talking about these things, once again, you might be coming at it from religious perspective, spiritual perspective, psychotherapeutic perspective. There's no right or wrong. You take that which works for you. Deal with these terms in terms of your own context and understanding, and let's take it from here. Many of you have heard of the concept that was articulated by the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung. And the concept I refer to is called the collective unconscious. So Carl Jung said if you go deep enough in your mind, and deep enough into my mind, and deep enough into everybody else's mind, that there is a level in which there are these mental images, what he called archetypes, that are all the same. That's why he would write about myths or stories or religious tales all over the world, all different times in history, and point out common themes. So, once again, going to use these Christ-centered words, but we're not talking about a religion here, okay? The idea is of the collective unconscious is that if you go deep enough into your mind and deep enough into someone else's, that there's mental imagery we all share. The notion of the Christ mind is that if you go deep enough into your mind and deep enough into mine, it's not just that there are images that we share, it's that there is only one mind, that we actually share this one mind. Now, next is the idea that on the level of mind, which is the level of spirit, as I said before, there's only one of us here. So really that means there's no place where you stop and I start. There's no place where I stop and you start. So you would ask yourself, well, what about the body? I'm over here, you're over there. We're thousands of miles away from each other. You're in your body, I'm in mine. Think of the spokes in a wheel, okay? So if you identify the spoke with its position on the rim of the wheel, then clearly there are a lot of different spokes and they're all separate from one another. But if you follow the line of the spoke from the rim all the way down to the hub, all the way down to the beginning point, there's one point. And in human consciousness, the idea of that unity, that idea of the one point, is, in Christ-centered terms, the Christ mind. Now, go back to what we were saying before about disconnection between brain and heart. The Christ mind, by whatever name you call it, Shekinah, Buddha mind, there are many terms that you can use. The idea is that this is the truth as God created it. It is unalterable and it is undeletable. I want to repeat that. The truth of who you are, and the Course in Miracles says you are an idea in the mind of God. Because God is an ocean of love that is all-encompassing. Nothing else can exist. So when God creates, he creates of himself. You are the extension of God's thought. That which God created cannot be altered. It cannot be eradicated. It cannot die. God is eternal life. You are of that. That is the truth of who you are. The Course in Miracles says that the body is like a suit of clothes. The body is the manifestation of the thought that we are separate from one another. And believing that we are separate from one another, we believe that we are separate from this oceanic love that is the truth of who we are. In that forgetfulness, we are separated from the truth, and that truth is this infinite, endless, all-powerful love. Go back to what we said before. Gandhi saying the problem with the world is that humanity is not in its right mind. In the Course in Miracles, it says, in the Bible, it says that Adam fell asleep. Nowhere does it say that he woke up. Humanity is in this sleep state, okay? And in this state of sleep, we're dreaming. That's what this mortal world is, and these dreams have turned into nightmares. And these are nightmares that manifest from behavior that is guided by thought, which is itself completely disconnected from the truth of who we are. That disconnection is the brain without its partnership with the heart. What is holiness? Holiness means the whole mind. The whole mind is not just through the brain. The whole mind is where the brain and the heart are not separated. Okay. Now, this state of separation, the Course in Miracles tells us, has been going on now for millions of years in time as we know it. Now, when you and I were children, we were taught about the evolution of a species. And we were taught that a species is, propagating and surviving. But it may get to a point where the behavioral patterns of that species are no longer optimal for the survival of the species, right? It is no longer well adapted for survival. So one of two things is going to happen. One thing that sometimes happens is that the failure of the species to adapt leads to its extinction. The other thing that can happen is when there's a mutation. And that mutation happens when there's an interruption. Some member of the species displays different behavior. And when that member of the species displays different behavior, then when there's a critical mass, doesn't have to be majority, it's an important point, when a critical mass of members of the species begin to display the behavior that is adapted to survival, then that species takes an evolutionary leap and it survives. I submit to you that where we are as a human race is that our collective behavioral patterns are no longer well adapted for human survival. We fight too much. We attack the earth. We're the only species that is known for the destruction of its own habitat. We attack each other too much. We attack ourselves. We're not in our right mind. And at this point, we have moved from dysfunctional patterns to maladaptive patterns. Where's the mutation coming from? The mutation is represented in all the great religious tales. The great religious tales of the world are code. So the Course in Miracles, for instance, even when I talk about these things with these Christ-centered terms, the themes themselves are universal. If you've read my books, if you've heard my talks, I also talk about Moses. I talk about ancient Egyptian mythology and religion. I talk about Buddha. Others that I don't talk about are simply because I'm not knowledgeable enough to be able to present the material in public. I don't know so much about them. But of those I know, there are clearly common themes that we can discuss. And it's fascinating to recognize that these are those archetypes and those stories that emerge throughout time and throughout all peoples. Now, the idea is that these stories and the great religious figures that are at the center of these stories represent the mutation. They represent another way. Now, the state that we have been in for, as I said, of course, in Miracles would say millions of years, is a state of illusion. It's a state of illusion in that it is a world where things unfold according to our own misguided thoughts. And because the world is a manifestation of our behavior based on thoughts that are disconnected from love, we find ourselves in a world that doesn't really make sense, that does not reflect the peace and the harmony of love, that reflects the insanity, really, of a human race that has forgotten who it really is and acts from this kind of imposter place. A lot of people these days call it the Matrix. It is the idea that, yeah, this is our three-dimensional reality, but something's really off here. And at this point, in the way the planet is unfolding, it doesn't, anybody that can't say, well, that kind of sounds right, something is off. And we're living at a time where the point now is to course correct, to do a kind of chiropractic adjustment of the consciousness of the human race so that we break through the patterns of disconnection and separation from love and bring forth a more beautiful world. Now, as I said, the Course in Miracles says that this disconnection occurred millions of years ago. And there are religious traditions that go back thousands of years that tell the story of reconnection. The story of Jesus is that 2,000 years ago, and 2,000 years ago in terms of human history is not even very long. There lived a man, and we know that he was a historical figure. But the thing, and this is always true with religious stories and religious tales, you can read it this way, you can read it this way, you can read it this way. It'll go as deep as you bring yourself to it. So we know a lot about the actual history of the man, Jesus, about his birth, about his growing up. We don't know anything. We know very little, if anything, about those lost years, but we know what's called the lost years, where we don't really have a record of where he was or what he was doing, but we know after that about his ministry, we know about his crucifixion, and then, of course, the Christian lore and belief and faith is his resurrection. Okay. Now, I said that this was going to be the story of the metaphysics, the spiritual dynamics of a crucifixion and resurrection. You can think of Christmas and Easter as the two kind of existential bookends, archetypally, that hold the world together, or hold each moment together. The idea of Christmas is the idea that the truth of who we are can be born into this world, that we're born in this perfect place, but that from the moment we get here, we're taught the insanity of thinking that we're separate and the world is a dangerous place and all of that. We can, however, be twice born, as it were. We can come to the realization that there's something bigger going on here. So that Christmas does not just mean the birth of one man 2,000 years ago. It means the possibility in any given instant for us to choose to be a more loving person, for us to choose a perspective on life that is not based on judgment and not based on blame and is not based on the past, but is based on our willingness to love and our recognition that our purpose is to love and to be loved. And at Christmas, the idea, of course, the three kings means, and they get off the horse and they bow to him, because when we are in that place, the birth of the truth of who we are, the birth of the Christ, when we are in that place, the material forces of the world bow to that place within us, and we're not slaves to the material forces. Easter is the idea, more than an idea, or I guess the point is the world is based on ideas, because that is the mental energy, that when we are in that place, we are lifted above in consciousness the lower energies that create or manifest anyway, because only God or love creates, but the manifestations that prevail within this world are based on fear, and fear is to love what darkness is to light. Darkness isn't a thing. Darkness is merely the absence of a thing. So if you walk into a dark room, you don't get rid of the darkness by hitting it with a baseball bat. You get rid of the darkness by turning on the light, and the darkness disappears. Fear is an emotion that emanates from lovelessness, a separation from love in our thinking, right? And you get rid of it not by analyzing it away, because that doesn't, just analyzing it away of itself doesn't rid us of it, but by replacing it with love. And that is the redemptive power of love. Just as light casts out darkness, love casts out fear. So Easter is what happens when the power of love so permeates our consciousness that we are lifted above the matrix, as it were. We are lifted above the consciousness of fear that dominates the world. So the idea is that the world as we know it is dominated by a thought system based on fear. That's the brain disconnected from the heart. That's the space of separation, disconnection from love, which is a disconnection from a higher power, God of our understanding, disconnection from each other, and disconnection from ourselves. That is the state of hell. That is the meaning, that is the metaphysical meaning of the word hell. It's a state where we cannot feel comfortable here, because love is our natural state of being. And the only way, how many of us, you've fallen in love, you're in somebody's arms, you hold a baby in your arms and you go, oh, this is heaven. Bingo. That is the metaphysical meaning of the word heaven. It's an awareness of our oneness. That's what we're always yearning for that. We're always yearning for a state of love. Okay. Now, this is the thing. Millions of years ago, in time as we know it, but, and you'll understand what I'm about to say in a moment, the Course in Miracles says, millions of years ago in time as you know it, but in reality it never happened at all. So stay with me here. This is metaphysical. What does metaphysical mean? Meta, greater than the physical. All right. When we were created by God, God is the substance of love. We are an idea in the mind of God. The Course in Miracles says, God created you, you didn't create God. The only difference between us is God created us. All of the aspects of God are in us, which means free will. Free will means freedom to think whatever you want to think. And because of the power and the glory that it is inherent within us, when we think, we have the power to manifest. The Course in Miracles says, all thought creates form on some level. When we think without love, now this is how it is. The basic building block of the universe, God's law, and the Course in Miracles says what God has created cannot be uncreated or altered, is cause and effect. All thought creates form on some level. So you look out at the world and you look at the craziness and you look at the poverty and you look at the war and you look at the violence and you go, oh, how could God do this? Well, the Course in Miracles says God didn't do this. You did this. Humanity did this. This is your manifestation. This is your nightmare. But you can't ask God to take the effect away from you. The effect is free will means you're going to get what you put out there. But what you can do is to ask God's help in changing on the level of cause, which means the level of our own thinking. That word salvation, what does it mean to be saved? The only thing to be saved from is our insane thinking. Salvation means saving us from the matrix, saving us from this thinking that is obviously insane. You look at some of what's going on the planet, it's insane. And not only is it insane, it cannot last. And everybody knows this. Everybody recognizes, it's like I've thought for a long time, the reason we're all sort of enamored of the story of the Titanic, it's not just because, it was a great movie, which of course it was, but because archetypally we get that we're all on it. We're just headed towards the iceberg, and the iceberg could be, it could be biomedical, it could be nuclear, it could be chemical. I mean, there are so many ways. You could just, got to turn it around. Now, salvation from this insanity, but let's talk about the power of that insanity. The mind is powerful. You cannot diminish the power of your mind, and this is very important. You cannot diminish the power of your mind. What God creates cannot be altered. So the issue is to learn to discipline our minds. The issue is to learn to dismantle the thought system that has us identifying with the matrix, that has us identifying with this illusionary world of the three dimensions where we're acting in such insane ways and hurting each other and threatening the future of humanity. But it's so solid, we're so stuck because we're taught this thought system from the time we're born, plus obviously our body's senses. Look, Marianne, you're over here and he's over there, that's obvious. But the spiritual eye says, well, he's over there and I'm over here. In the body, he's over there and I'm over here. But as the Course in Miracles says, the spirit is eternal. So physical birth is the beginning of life, but is not the beginning of life, but a continuation. The physical death is the continuation of life. It's not the end of life. And this idea of distance between you and me is part of the three dimensions, but there's a more real reality in which there is no separation between us. And there you get the golden rule. Treat other people the way you'd have other people treat unto you. Because they will. And if they don't, someone else will. Because the lesson is that when you did that, you were actually doing it to yourself. But time and space is just this lesson plan. So you'll get it back. And it will seem that someone did it to you, but you'll know better. So let's stay with this. When the mind separated from love millions of years ago, You've got a thought that's separated from love. But remember, your thought cannot be weak. So when your thought is not loving, that doesn't mean it's not powerful. Loving thought is co-creation with God. Non-loving thought is still the power to manifest. It's within this world of our own nightmare, but it's very real within those three dimensions, right? And the mind, your mind, is very powerful, all-powerful, whether you place it in the service of love or you place it in the service of fear. That old Bob Dylan song, you're going to have to serve somebody. It might be the devil, it might be the Lord, but you're going to have to serve somebody. Now, the mind, when it is away from love, doesn't just not serve love, it works against love. Of Course in Miracles says there's no such thing as a neutral thought. So what is this force that works against love? Well, many traditional Christians and so forth call it the devil. I remember saying to myself, having been a student of these comparative religious, Course in Miracles, all these metaphysical principles that are at the heart of all the great religious systems, I said to myself, oh, Marianne, you don't have to worry about a devil because there's nothing out there, seeking, stomping through the planet, trying to grab men's souls. I remember saying to myself, Marianne, that's absolutely ridiculous. It's all in your mind. And then I thought about that for a second. And I thought, my mind, that's the worst place it could possibly be. We have within us, all of us, the temptation to perceive without love. And that's not nothing. And the Course in Miracles uses the word for the mind when it is separate from love, the way the ancient Greeks used it, the word ego. And in every moment, we are either hostage to the ego or host to love. This is very significant. Every single moment. This is the psychological profundity of all this. Every single moment, we make a choice. Sometimes we make it consciously, sometimes we make it unconsciously. But every moment we are making a choice, and we are accountable to it because we're going to get an effect from it. Is it going to be an open heart? Is it going to be generous? Is it going to be loving? Is it going to be there to participate in a contributive way and making a space for other people to feel good about themselves? Or is it going to be judgment, blame, withhold of love and approval, games, that stuff, the lower level energies. And now a lot of modern psychotherapy would say, not all of it, because there's a transformation going on in psychotherapy, but a lot of modern psychotherapy would say, well, I have to work out why I'm that way. But it doesn't matter where you got it, it's yours now. And the issue from a spiritual perspective is to create the discipline. Notice the word discipline comes from the same root as disciple, to exercise your mind like a muscle. You pick, look at weights, right? Okay, like, all right, well, I have a jacket on, but if I didn't have a jacket on, you'd see, does she or does she not have flabby, underarms? Well, I don't have flabby underarms. Why? Because I know that I have to do the exercise, accumulated repetitions of going against the gravity of the world in order to develop musculature. The same is true with attitudinal muscles. The same is true with emotional muscles. The same is true with psychological muscles. You have to work it. Why? Because just as there's physical gravity, there's psychological and emotional gravity, particularly living on this earth, particularly today, by the way. The gravity of negativity, the gravity of anger, the gravity of cynicism, the gravity of fear. And we have to work it. Now, here we are. We already talked about where the human race is. And just where we are in our own lives. It seems very difficult at times to get out of this matrix of fear. Now, 2,000 years ago, a man was born. We know he lived. And the interesting thing is, the Course in Miracles does not say he's the only one. Now, many traditional Christians believe that the line in the Bible, there is only one begotten Son, means Jesus and no one else. From a metaphysical perspective, the phrase "there is only one begotten Son" refers to what we were talking about before, that there's only one of us here, only one begotten Son. Now, think of your mind as a computer. Think of that Christ mind, perfect mind, the loving version of you. I mean, we've all had times when we totally got it right. It's easy to get it right and be all loving around people who love you. So we've all had those moments. But life is hard. Truth is simple enough, actually, but life is complicated and life is hard. So there's this undeletable file, which is Marianne the good, Marianne the loving, Marianne the whatever. All of us have that. But the thinking of the world has trained us to bring down onto the screen Marianne the controlling, or Marianne the needy, or Marianne the whatever. And life is about knowing you're responsible for what button you push. But that undeletable file is undeletable because God created it. And the idea that God created us as one means that everybody has that undeletable file. And that on the level of that undeletable file, we're all not just the same, it's bigger than the same, that we are one. Michelangelo was asked, how do you create a statue? He said, I go to the quarry, I see all these pieces of marble in my mind. I know that God has already created the Pieta. God has already created David. God has already created Moses. My job, he said, is to get rid of the excess marble. So the idea is that God has created the perfect you, and personal growth, spiritual growth, religious growth is dissolving all the layers of fear based on the wounds, based on the triggers, based on the mental training, based on the evidence of the physical senses that we all accumulate. And ultimately you learn we're all wounded, but we're also at choice whether or not to act from the wound. 2,000 years ago, someone lived. Once again, the Course in Miracles does not say he's the only one, but it does say, if he's your teacher, you need no other. That's not to say there won't be others or that there are not others. There's one room. There are many names on the door to the room, and one is Jesus. The Course in Miracles says that Jesus, while he was on the earth, escaped the matrix. While he was on the earth, he was delivered. He was saved from the thoughts of fear that bind us living on this earth. Thus, he was that mutation. Once again, we're not saying he's the only one. We're talking about Easter today, though. Okay? Now, the idea here is that the moment millions of years ago we began, stay with me on this, okay? The Course in Miracles says God is all perfect love. So God, all perfect love has an answer to every problem the moment the problem occurs. Millions of years ago, the human mind separated itself from love. The Course in Miracles calls it the detour into fear, the moment when the Son of God forgot to laugh, it says. In that moment, because God creates the answer to every problem the moment it occurs, what would God's answer be? Well, God's solution to the problem would not be to force us back, because we're free. We were created in freedom, and God does not force. His answer, the Course says, was to create within our consciousness an eternal communication link between God and his separated sons. There is this link, and that is called, in Christ-centered terms, the Holy Spirit. So when we are lost in the craziness of this world, we can ask for help crossing the bridge back to our right mind. If we do not ask for the help, it would be a violation of our free will for the Holy Spirit to enter into our mind and change our perspective. But if we are willing, I am willing to see this differently. That's the point of power. I am willing to see this situation differently. Then the Holy Spirit is given the power by God. Now, this that predates, that's many, many, many thousands of years, many different religious systems, the Covenant of Israel, many different ones in many ways. Once again, all the great religious systems talk about what is that way back. Religio means to bind back. The idea of Jesus, the story of Jesus, is that while he was on the earth, he achieved the level of consciousness where love has replaced all perceptions of fear. Lovelessness no longer dwells within him. He never blames. He never judges. He never sees anyone as separate from him. He's gotten there. He made it all the way. And in him, heaven, awareness of oneness, and earth became as one, meaning, the Course says he lived on the earth, but he thought only the thoughts of heaven. The Course says, having reached that place, he was then given the authority by God to help the rest of us get there, should we so choose. Once again, only if we ask. Violation of our free will if we don't. The idea here is, you know how sometimes you go through a situation and you go, this is a nightmare. Or you're having a fight with someone and you say, this can't be happening. Well, that's because on that level of ultimate reality, it's not, because only love is real. This is all a manifestation that is a product of the thinking that is separate from love. But we're so powerful that, as the Course in Miracles says, illusions are as powerful in their effects as is the truth. But if we say, I am willing to see this differently, now what does that mean? Right now, I'm full of anger, I'm full of judgment, I'm full of attack, I'm full of thoughts of the past, and the trigger is too big, the wound is too big. You know, sometimes, let's say you're out to lunch with a friend, and you're really angry at someone, and you're just laying it out, and your friend says, come on, you're bigger than that. Come on, give that up. And you go, yeah, you're right, I don't know what I was thinking. But other times, what you're going through within your life experience was such a trigger or such a wound that it's not so simple as just, oh, lighten up. It's like in your bones. And what you need then is a miracle. And a miracle, the Course in Miracles says, is a divine intercession from a thought system beyond our own, where we ask. And that is the meaning of the word prayer. Prayer is the medium of miracles. The highest level of prayer is not an entreaty for anything except the return to our right mind. Now, I mentioned a couple minutes ago that Jesus was at a state where nothing lovelessness existed in his consciousness. He was all the way there. That's why in his presence, water turned to wine. That's why in his presence, the sick were healed. That's why in his presence, the dead were raised. Because his mind had become one, atonement, at one-ment. His perception had been corrected. He was so atoned, he was so reconciled with the Spirit of God, all love, all perfection, that in his presence, the physical world automatically harmonized, automatically self-corrected. Think of the universe, God's universe, as like a GPS. You make a wrong turn, i.e. loveless thought, the universe will automatically recalibrate to show you another way. The issue is, are we willing? The Course in Miracles says salvation begins when we consider the possibility that there might be another way. To say that Jesus is another way is to say that this is someone, once again, the Course in Miracles doesn't say he's the only one. He is someone who has totally achieved the state of consciousness that is one with all the infinite power and glory of love. His mind has gotten there. And should we request His relationship to us is, as the Course says, an elder brother. He says he's not in a different order of reality than we are. He is someone who has achieved a state where all fear turns to love. The Course in Miracles says the crucifixion was a way to demonstrate, right? So what could be more of a demonstration of ego? And the ego is suspicious at best and vicious at worst. What could be more of a demonstration of lovelessness than the torture and the murder of an innocent man who had harmed no one and had helped many? Yet in his consciousness, they say someone was crucified to his left and crucified to his right, but we never heard they resurrected. His mind was at that state. So what happened? The women who were at the feet of the cross, he's taken to the tomb after his crucifixion. On the third day, the women come to get the body. The angels were there. The Course in Miracles says the angels are the thoughts of God. Those hits we get, the downloads we get, the muses. And they said, he is not here. His body is not here. He has risen. What does that mean? We are all crucified in our lives. The ego is. It's in us and it's in other people. The Course in Miracles says, you were not created to be at the effect of lovelessness within yourself or within others. If you choose to identify with the wound, then you are choosing to suffer its effects. If I say, what they did to me was so awful, and I remain attached to that, then I cannot escape the pain of what they did to me, because I am choosing to attach myself, to identify with the matrix, as it were. The Course in Miracles says enlightenment is a shift in self-perception from body identification to spirit identification. There's a difference between processing our emotions and spewing them. There's a difference between honoring our emotions and indulging them. And that's the meaning of those 3 days between the crucifixion and the resurrection. We're human. So you're going through a crucifixion in your life. Someone has been mean to you. Something horrible has happened. Fear has overridden love, and you suffer. The message of Easter is stay with love, atone for your own mistakes, see through the mistakes in others. Forgiveness is where you realize what happened, but you are willing to extend your perception beyond what your physical senses perceived and experienced to what you know is true, which is the innocence and the love within us all. You make that choice. Then you're still human. You're going to have to cry. You're going to be in pain. You're going to be on that cross that's your own personal cross. But if you choose to remain with love and you use your 3 days for that, and you use the time on the cross for that, and you say, I am willing to atone. I am willing to see where I did my part that helped to cause this. Because the Course in Miracles says, you're going to have to take 100% responsibility for your life experience. And if you don't, the price you pay is that you can't change it. The only victims are children. And you say, what did I do? What part have I played? And there are people, of course, who are, in earthly terms, of course, victims of circumstances. But in terms of the lives we live, how important it is to atone for our own mistakes and to forgive other people for theirs. Why? Because that's the only way to return to love. That's the only way to return to the Christ mind. The Christ mind is not identifying with what happened on the earth. The Christ mind is identifying with who we are despite our mistakes. There is no resurrection without Easter. There is no resurrection without the metaphysics of Easter, meaning without the metaphysics of a return to love, a return to that state of mind. And in that state, miracles happen, self-correction happens. The universe is both self-organizing and self-correcting. And not only does every cell in your body know where to go, every cell in the body knows through kind of natural intelligence how to move in the direction of other cells with whom it is meant to collaborate. And that collaboration, the purpose of that collaboration is to serve the healthy functioning of the organ and the organism of which they are part. Every once in a while, the cell goes insane. The cell loses its connection to its natural intelligence. It separates from its collaborative function. What is that? That's what cancer is. And that is what has happened to the human race. The human race has been infected by a malignant consciousness. It's all about me. That cell says it's all about me. I'm not here to just collaborate with others to serve the healthy functioning of the larger. And that's what's happened to us as people. We've forgotten why we're here. We're here to love each other. We're here to collaborate with each other. We're here to just work together to create a more beautiful world. We're not here to fight. We're not here to just the negative side of competition. That's not what we're here for. We're not here to destroy. We're here to love. And out of that separation from our sense of who we are and why we're here, that is a malignancy. And it is now. We are, the species is a tumor on the earth. The species, we are a malignant force. But the body also has an immune system. And the spirit has an immune system. And that's what redemption is. That's what salvation is. That's what resurrection is. The return to our right mind. In terms of our own selves, we can go back to that moment. Where did you do something loveless? Where did you do something stupid? Where were you only thinking about yourself? Where were you not responsible to yourself or others? In Catholicism, they have confession. In Judaism, they have Yom Kippur, that holiest day of the year, the Day of Atonement. In AA, the taking, a stock of your own, inventory of your own character defects, making amends. That's what we have to be. Nothing's going to fix itself if we don't. That's where this country is. Each and every one of us has to ask, what part did I play? Was I disconnected? Was I apolitical? Did I think somebody else was going to handle it? Did I not take responsibility for citizenship? Did I think my side was always right? If we want to heal, whether it's our country or the world itself, we're going to have to return to a different state of consciousness. Einstein said we will not solve the problems of the world from the level of thinking we were at when we created them. And that's what this is about. That's what Jesus is about. That's what Easter is about. Evolution of our thinking. If he had been on the cross, I hate you, he would not have resurrected. Go back to the tomb. When the angel said to the women, he's not here, he has risen. That's what that means. When you've really done your work, when in the midst of your own crucifixions, your own relationships that have gone wrong, you lost the money, you lost the work, you lost the loved one, you lost the marriage, you went bankrupt, you were sick, whatever it is. When you have reached that place where you are reconciled with your mistakes, you're reconciled with other people's mistakes, you're not even who you were before. That's why the body wasn't in the tomb. That's the old you. The old you isn't even there. The old you has risen above that kind of behavior, that kind of stuff, those kind of dramas. You're released. Isn't that wonderful? When Bob Dylan sings, I shall be released. I think Bette Midler sang it as well. Because there's only one mind, when any one person has achieved that state, it is then an available option to everyone. So we've seen those pictures, that old medieval, I think it's a image from the Middle Ages, Jesus with a lantern knocking at the door. There's another one from I think it was St. Bonaventure, some of the old medieval philosophy. The bridegroom does not enter the bridal chamber unless invited, but once there, shall never leave. We have to humble ourselves to say, God, this one is too big for me. It's like in AA, situation's unmanageable. It's where we are in the United States today. This is they say in AA, your best thinking got you here. Hey, America, your best thinking got you here. Where have we been heartless? Where have we not been responsible in our own lives as well as collectively? Where have we been careless with life, with the planet, with our power? The same question. The question for us individually is no different than the question for us as citizens. Where are we just thinking about ourselves, forgetting that love one another should be the guiding principle of all individual action, and I believe of public policy. So the ego doesn't want any deep inquiry into what all this means. It has all kinds of names for it. Because the ego loves to, anything which you're talking about yourself. What it doesn't want us to see is the bigger story that's going on here, and the responsibility that we have to ourselves to exit this plane. One of the things that I mentioned earlier was that when there is an evolutionary leap, it doesn't take a majority. And I think that that is particularly relevant today. The majority of Americans didn't want to separate from England. The majority of Americans didn't wake up in the morning and say, let's free the slaves. The majority of Americans didn't say, let's give women the right to vote. A majority of Americans didn't say, let's desegregate the South. It's when there are enough people, a critical mass, whose hearts align with a more just idea, greater love. So is Easter a day of joy? Oh, yeah, but it's a mature and quiet joy. There's a part in the Course in Miracles that says if you've been in a dungeon for a very long time and then you're let out of the dungeon, you wouldn't immediately jump up and down, yay, yippee. In fact, you might take a while, maybe you'd even cry to see blue sky for the first time in however long. Feel the breeze on your skin, to see sunlight. That to me is the joy of Easter. It's wow, we can escape this madness. Easter is centered around the birth, the crucifixion, the resurrection of Jesus. Crucifixion, once again, being a demonstration. He said, prove that I did not die by proving that I did not die in vain. That's what he says in the Course in Miracles. I did not die in vain. I died in order to demonstrate to you that when you are crucified, by yourself or by others, you stay with the love. You atone for your mistakes. You make amends for your mistakes. You seek to forgive others for theirs. Not because you're spiritual and they're not, but realizing that their mistakes are just like your mistakes. We all have points where we don't know how to, in that moment, give love and get our needs met. We all get confused living on this plane and we mess up. But only if you identify with what they did to you will you be the effect of what they did to you. It takes time to work through that. It takes those proverbial 3 days, just like the 40 years in the Old Testament, from the state of slavery to the promised land, the 3 days from the crucifixion to the resurrection. My friend Sandy Scott calls it tomb time. That's why life can be hard. We're working on it. But if it's not working on it, as in working to atone for your own mistakes, working to forgive others for theirs, both for us as individuals and collectively, then we will continue in the direction we're moving. And the Course in Miracles says there is a limit past which the Son of God cannot miscreate. When we are thinking lovelessly, behaving lovelessly, we are miscreating. Ultimately, it will not work. It just stops being workable. Yes, democracy is not a guarantee. Yes, survival of the species is not a guarantee. But we can also rise above this. I can't imagine a time in any of our lives when Easter, if looked at from that level of inquiry, could not be more relevant. Resurrection means return of the right mind. Return to the right mind. What are we doing? We're here to love each other. And you go, well, we'd have to completely change everything. We'd have to completely change politics. We'd have to completely change economics. We'd have to completely change society. We'd have to, yeah, we would. Not to think about. Not about left versus right. It's not about any of that. It's deeper. So begin with your own life. I don't know if you feel in your heart that this is about welcoming Jesus and his guidance. It's up to you. No proselytizing here. Maybe it's saying, well, I don't want to go that far, but I do get that forgiveness, I got to forgive. I got to get rid of this burden. I'm carrying so much hate around. The love of Jesus is what caused the water to turn into wine. The love of Jesus is what made the sick heal. We have to forgive one another. Everybody's made mistakes. And I'm now saying to Americans, come on, everybody, we've all made mistakes. No one side has had it all right. No one citizen has had it all right. We've got to give general amnesty here to each other. And we have to atone for the mistakes that we have made. And we have to fall in love with the possibilities for the future. We're living in a world of two simultaneous realities, one world falling apart and one world, that incredible line from Arundhati Roy, a new world is struggling to be born. We have to be death doulas and birth doulas. We have to very gently help. There's so much that should have died, that should have changed, and we didn't change it, and now it's being changed for us. We will be given the guidance to deal with that, but not from the mindset. Once again, Einstein, the thinking that got us here is not the thinking that will help us forward. New paradigm, new thinking, new mind. That is what the Christ is, the renewal of the mind. So, I mentioned earlier the way to make this contact. One way is through prayer. Prayer is the medium of miracles. And that miracle is where there is a divine intercession. I had a prayer the other day. I was feeling down. And I said, God, I'd like a sign. Can you just give me a sign? Like maybe, I just want to be happy and I'm not happy. I don't know. I thought there was like somebody was going to call or something. And I was walking down the street and I said that prayer. And about 5 minutes later, I just felt happy. And I thought, well, wow, nothing's happened. And then I got it. No, nothing's happened. What you are is your eyes are open. This is really a beautiful neighborhood. That's really a beautiful sky. It's really a beautiful day. The breeze is beautiful. The sun is shining. Compared to the majority of people on the planet and the suffering that people go, you have nothing to complain about, Missy. That's what changed, and that's what made me happy. But I had to pray for it because I was stuck. We all get stuck. We're so attached to circumstances. The Course in Miracles says happiness is not circumstance dependent. But boy, it's not always easy. He says in the Course in Miracles, my way is not difficult, but it is different. So whether you are, whatever your path, Course in Miracles has no monopoly on truth. No one path has a monopoly on truth. You find out which is true for you. your own meditation, your own prayer, your own psychotherapeutic technique, but it's got to involve forgiveness. And it will involve some level of the quieting of the mind in the midst of the chaos of this world, because the ego speaks loudest and the ego speaks first. But on Easter, we celebrate that one man made it all the way to the point where death itself, his life force, still there. The real him, still there. The ego could damage, even destroy the body, and the ego would. But what God has created cannot be destroyed. And what God wills, the Course in Miracles says God's will has never not been done. And I think we all know that about what's happening in this country today. It's going to be okay. What's up to us is how much suffering and chaos has to happen first. It's going to be okay on some level because life works that way. What free will means is it going to happen now? Is it going to happen later? You're going to take responsibility for how irresponsible we were. You're going to forgive everybody else. I think my point here is that it can be our Easter too. So today, we celebrate. He got there. And once something's in the field, it belongs to all of us because there's only one of us here. And he says, in times where it's very confusing for you and chaotic and difficult for you, he said, take my hand as a child would for an older brother. I will be there to help you walk across the rocks. I hope that this inquiry into the deeper meaning of Easter has been meaningful for you. Before we say a prayer, I do want to mention many of you are going to be doing or are interested in doing the year-long journey that we do. You can find out about my classes, etc., on Marianne.com. Just want you to know, for those of you who are interested, those are interactive classes, where in addition to my talking, we talk about your specifics. We talk about your specific crucifixions or whatever, and we seek to work the principles of metaphysical, spiritual, and religious truths, imposing them on the circumstances of the world in order that those circumstances might transform. I wish you all the very, very happiest holiday. I hope that it is not a mindless holiday, but a mindful holiday for you. And crucifixion happens, but that's never the end of the story. The resurrection is the end of the story. You know how in the fairy tales they live happily ever after? What that means is one moment where you get what's really going on here, which is we're only trying to love and be loved, and then another moment where you get we're only here to love and be loved, and then another moment where we really get we're only here to love and be loved. That's where happiness lies. That's what salvation is. That's what redemption is. That's what resurrection is. And it is available to us now. Let's help us get there. All of us help each other. Like I said, truth is simple enough. Life is complicated, life is hard. But there is another way. Salvation begins when we consider the possibility there might be another way. Let's pray for that now. Dear God, all of us bring to you the crucifixions in our own lives. And we know that you know exactly what they are. Also the crucifixion of our collective experience, the violence, the oppression, the injustice, all of the things that are not love, that are on this earth. We place them in the hands of the divine. And we open our hearts and minds and we pray. And on this Easter, for those of us who feel so moved, we do pray that the divine elder brother enter into us. And whether we choose him as internal teacher and guide or not, we do give praise, thanks, respect, and love to this man who not only lived, but who lives still yet, in the spirit and the ethers of this world, and for many in our hearts. Go forth in confidence and go forth in peace. For there are angels to your left and angels to your right, angels in front of you and angels below, angels all around. If there are moments of doubt and fear, take his hand, as would a small child take the hand of an elder brother. He shall guide you. This is no idle fantasy. He is here. May all beings be reconciled. May all peoples be reconciled. May all be forgiven. May the world be reborn. May we be the people, God, that you would have us be, that we might do as you would have us do. And so it is. We all say, Amen. It was great being with you. Thank you so much.